Welcome to the Endurance Horse Podcast, where endurance riders from all across the globe gather, sharing their stories, goals, and progress as they train for and compete in endurance events at every level. So kick off your shoes, pull up a chair, and listen as we gather around the virtual campfire and listen to friends from across the world.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Endurance Horse Podcast. I am your host, Christina Hike, and I'd like you to imagine this with me for a moment. You saddled up your horse at sunrise. The air is cool, your horse is fresh, and ahead of you stretches miles and miles of forest. No arena, no fences, just the trail. You ride through towering pines, across open stretches, through streams and creeks and rivers. You camp under the stars beside your horse, and somewhere along the way you realize this isn't just a trail. This is something people have protected, built, and fought to keep alive over generations. Today we're talking about Michigan's Shore-to-Shore Trail, a trail system that spans across the great state of Michigan. It was shaped by riders, carried forward through generations, and maintained today by a community that refuses to let it disappear. Today we're diving into how this trail was formed, the riders who helped create it, the history that lives within it, and who is maintaining it today. And the magic of the trail that keeps calling riders back so many times, there are people who have crossed it 50 or 60 times, state to state, shore to shore, Great Lake to Great Lake. We'll also be covering how you can experience this trail in person yourself, or how you can support this podcast and the Great Lakes Distance Riding Association by joining the Warhorse 250-mile shore-to-shore virtual challenge. Today, I am so honored and glad that I got to meet and talk with Jan Gould. She is a third-generation rider of the Shore-to-Shore Trail, someone who doesn't just ride it, she lives it, she supports it, and she advocates for it. So welcome with me to the podcast, Jan Gould, Secretary for Michigan Trail Riders Association, the champion of the Shore-to-Shore Trail. Hey, Jan, thanks for agreeing to join us on Endurance Horse Podcast to talk about the great Shore-to-Shore Trail that goes across the entire state of Michigan. How did you get into horses?
Well, my family has always been involved with horses. My grandfather is where I first started learning how to ride, and my mom had a horse when she was 5, and so it definitely was in my blood. I started riding when I was 8 years old on my own horse.
Tell us a little bit about that first horse.
So my first horse was a retired sheriff's posse horse. He was a Tennessee Walker, and I learned how to ride on him. He was very safe. And then my next horse was an Arabian. My grandfather loved Arabian horses. So those were, what he recommended and wanted his, grandchildren to ride. Definitely a lot hotter than the retired old Tennessee walking horse. And I actually completed my first shore-to-shore ride on a quarter horse. I had ridden 3 horses by the time I turned 11 and did my first shore-to-shore crossing.
You are the secretary for Michigan Trail Riders Association?
Yes.
How did you become a trail advocate? Was it that love of trail riding? Was it part of your family? Or how did you come to give so much of your time to preserving trails?
Yes, all of the above. With the Michigan Trail Riders Association, and I'm going to shorten it to MTRA just because it's easier to say, when you register, you receive a number. And those numbers are in chronological order, and they started back in the 70s. Everyone was assigned a number. And the reason why I'm saying this is there's a story behind it. So you can keep that number for the rest of your life if you keep up on making your membership payments each year. My grandfather's number was 238. My parents' number was 1,227. And my number that I received when I was 20 is 4,608. And currently, as of today, our most recent number is 8,048. So that means we have had over 8,000 people register with the MTRA since our existence.
That's awesome.
Or since our beginning, yeah.
So where would you like to start? Would you like to start on how the Shore-to-Shore Trail came to be and then how MTRA started to have a role in that? Because for our listeners, I'm probably going to preface this in the intro, but the Shore-to-Shore Trail goes across the entire state of Michigan from one Great Lake to the other Great Lake. So I would love to hear the history of the Shore-to-Shore Trail.
In the early 1960s, our founding members had this idea of creating horse trails to go all the way across the state of Michigan. They worked with the Forest Service and the Michigan DNR, and they actually took a small plane and flew over the northern lower peninsula of Michigan. They started in the Luzerne area, which is east of Grayling. So they went from Lake Huron to Lake Michigan, and they knew where the public land areas were. So they used the small plane to kind of map out where they could start this trail. And then they worked, they kept finding locals in the area, whether it was a DNR person or a Forest Service person. They found landowners that, were near the areas and volunteered to help map this trail out. It started in the early 1960s, and in 1964, they completed their first shore-to-shore crossing. And the rule is you have to put your feet in one lake, let's say Lake Huron, and then you have to ride the approximate 237 miles to the other lake of Lake Michigan, and your horse has to put its feet in the water. And that's how you get a certificate and a little trophy for the completion.
Well, that's pretty cool. Tell me about that a little bit more. So what came first, the Shore to Shore Trail or MTRA?
The first founding members, they knew that they needed to create an association in order to get funding and stuff to help build the trail and the camps. And so MTRA was incorporated in 1963.
For the purpose of creating this trail?
Correct.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. And
yeah.
I hope just hearing that someone in some other state gets that bug, because they don't need an airplane to map it out anymore. They have Google Earth now.
Right.
So
yes, exactly.
And the internet. And, so thinking about that, this was pre-internet that they actually got a plane and did this, and man, they really rolled up their sleeves and got it done.
Yes, they really had this dream, and I am so proud to be part of this and helping promote and maintain this shore-to-shore trail that has been around for over 60 years. It's just really it's just such a great thing to be part of.
Yeah, so now that the trail is established, what other role does Michigan Trail Riders Association take on?
Well, we do host work bees to help clean up certain areas of the trail. Throughout the years, we added a North Spur trail in the 90s, and we also added a South Spur trail. So these two sections branch off the original shore-to-shore east and west trail. And so last year, the historic ice storm that hit northern Michigan, the northern lower peninsula, devastated our trail and our camps. And we actually were unable to use the North Spur trail section last year. We had to cancel our ride or rearrange our ride because we couldn't even use the trail with the ice storm. So due to many hours by volunteers of the Michigan Trail Riders Association, we were able to get the trail cleaned up and reopened with the help of the Michigan DNR and the U.S. Forest Service. We were able to reopen the trail and the camps by November. However, that's about when riding season ends in northern Michigan. Our board members, we have 15 board members, and each person is responsible for a camp and a section of trail. So it is their responsibility to clear it before a ride is coming through, their responsibility to make sure that the camp is ready and clear. A couple of our camps, we actually have to bring in some porta potties. That we only have 2 camps that we have to do that with because there isn't a vault toilet that has been installed at this time. And then the MTRA, our total trail system is 444 miles, and we have 16 camps to maintain.
That's impressive. Can you, because I do love the visual of your website, can you give your website right now? Because on your opening page there, it shows all that trail.
Yeah, so mtra.org is our website, where you can find lots of information and sign up for memberships. You can also sign up for our rides as well, and you do have to be a member to join one of our rides.
I want to talk about those rides, but first I'm going to talk to our Endurance Horse Podcast audience and just say, I'm going to point out how this interview came to be. There was an endurance ride called the Shore to Shore Ride that ran for 40 years, and they've retired it for now. So that's how we learned about the Shore to Shore. GLDRA said, yeah, you really have to talk to MTRA because they're the ones who made this trail and made it possible. So that's what we're talking about this, because trail preservation comes up a lot on the podcast. And then I thought this would be the perfect system to highlight because your group made it possible. Like people like you and your family and multi-generational have made this possible. And I love highlighting those great things in these areas. So now I would like to hear about your shore to shore traditional ride. I did see on a video on your website, you guys own a big blue bus, and I'm thinking that has something to do with this ride. So could you explain a little bit?
Yes. When you join us on one of our organized rides, our June ride this year, we include 4 layover days in between. So you will ride for 2 days and then you have a day off for rest. A lot of people that are new to this, I suggest doing that June ride because those rest days are very welcoming to you and your horse especially if it's hot out. And in September, this year we are offering a crisscross ride. So we are going to be using the North Spur, the South Spur, and the East and West Trail. Some will join us on all of it. Some will just join us for part. And there are no layover days for that one. It takes 11 days to complete the East and West shore to shore ride. In the morning, you get your horse ready for the day's ride by feeding it, taking care of it, setting your tack out, and then you move your truck and trailer to the next camp. And then our big blue bus takes you back to your horse, and then you can saddle up and get ready and ride to the next camp where your truck and trailer will be waiting for you.
That sounds so cool. How do you organize this? I'm just thinking
Well,
logistically, this sounds like wow. But you guys have
yes,
done it a lot, so you probably have a plan on paper.
yes, and we have a trail boss. We have a trail boss on all of our rides who has emergency phone numbers for local veterinarians, local hospitals. He also is a longtime member, as I mentioned before, with the MTRA numbers. His number is 14. So he has been pretty much involved with MTRA since the beginning. He has lots of knowledge and really enjoys being our trail boss. He does a great job with it. Talk about the MTRA numbers because they really do hold a significance.
They do. Yeah, it's an honor to have one of those early numbers. So now I want to bring this back to maybe the Wisconsin, Illinois person that's listening, somebody that's within pretty good driving distance, maybe even Ohio. And they're like, wow, this trail sounds pretty cool. I'd love to support it. I'd love to investigate, see what's so great about it. But I don't have 11 days. I don't have a week to get away from my farm. But I do have a weekend. So let's talk to that person who's listening that says, I don't have weeks, but I do have a weekend. Where would you recommend is a good trailhead for them to start that is pretty accessible, but they're also going to get to see something pretty cool like water crossings?
One of my personal favorite camps is the South Branch Trail Camp. And it just so happens that this year in July, we are hosting an endurance ride. It is called the Asable Pines Endurance Ride. And the dates are July 24th through the 26th. Friday, July 24th is Arrival Day. And then the organized rides, the competition will be for Saturday and Sunday. We have 10, 15, 25, and 50-mile competitions. We are working with GLADRA, the Great Lakes Distance Riding Association, to help us with this ride. South Branch Camp is located in Northeast Michigan. There are many circle riding opportunities at this camp, and most of the circle riding is along the Asable River. There are beautiful high bank overlooks for the river. There's a lot of riding through the woods and pine trees and hardwood trees. There are river crossings, water crossings. It's just a beautiful area of Michigan. Definitely one of my favorites.
So over this entire trail, how many campgrounds are there where people could go?
All of our camps are open to anyone to join except for Cadillac Camp and the River Road Camp. Those are closed camps that are only open when we are there. They are also the 2 camps that don't have vault toilets and we have to rent porta potties. Look, I believe DNR camps have a certain time frame, whether it's April 1st to November 1st or something like that. I'm not positive.
So the DNR does have trailheads where you can just drive up and ride for the day, ride for the weekend?
Yes. Most of our camps, if they don't have a separate staging area, you can just pull into them and get a parking spot.
So you don't have to be part of an event to use the trail?
Correct.
So if somebody does want to be part of one of these rides that is so long, 11 days, I can't imagine who would take care of everything at home if I left for that long. But what is it like camping along the shore to shore?
All of our camps are rustic, so that means vault toilets. MTRA has installed wells at each camp that is operated with a 5,000-watt generator. Our trail boss has a generator to use, for everyone to be able to get, fresh water. A lot of the camps, most of the camps have a hand pump as well, so therefore they can use those camps when the MTRA is not there.
So aside from organizing rides across the state, what have you done to grow MTRA so that it can be a presence that preserves this trail?
Well, we are trying to make a presence online and help through Facebook groups and also joining in like the Michigan Horse Expo. I have been also writing articles for magazines, and we are about to be featured in one of Michigan's travel magazines. Those are how we're trying to promote this and grow our association.
I'm just thinking of a person that's listening and they think, I want to get active in preserving trails in my state. Do you have tips for them? As I do like the writing online, promoting online, writing articles. I mean, people discount how much of a spark that can be to writing an article, because I can't tell you how many people even got into endurance riding just because they read an article, and then their whole family got into endurance riding. So I think that is pretty important for us to show up in places that were unexpected, whether for talking about trail promotion or endurance promotion. A lot of people got into endurance riding because they read an article in Western Horseman magazine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who did you write articles for?
For Horseman's Corral, and we are also located in the Saddle Up magazine on their online edition. And then the next magazine I'll be writing an article for is Michigan Voyager, and it is such an accomplishment to see that lake when you have been riding for 10 days and you're on day 11 and you see that lake. Our lakes here in Michigan are like oceans, and I may have shed a tear my last time for completing it, which was in 2024, because it was just a huge accomplishment to still be able to do it since I was 11 years old, and now I'm 45, and it's just such a great experience.
Tell me about how someone signs up to do this in-person trip from one Great Lake to the other. How do they sign up? And is this is only done in June, or do you?
Yes, you can visit our website, mtra.org. If someone would like to email, you can reach me at mtra.office@gmail.com.
What I love about this is that this partnership, I believe, with GLDRA, it brought MTRA to our visual, which we weren't aware of. And what I really hope is that somebody reaches out to me and says, because I heard this episode, we started something in Indiana, or Maine, and now we have this thing. Because before there were roads, really, before there were roads, there were trails. Before there were trucks, there were horses. And that's not just in this country, that's everywhere. So for centuries, horses and walking, those were our modes of transportation. And I think that preserving that equine heritage is so important, in today's day and age. And I hope we can all encourage another person to get into riding. And we talked about this before off air, but everybody's reaching out to the youth, and I think that's really important. But I think that your 30 or 40-year-old mom who used to ride, I think that's the person too to reach out to. Don't you agree?
Yes, I agree. I have a 7-year-old, and I take him with me when I, go to the camps. I don't know if he's up for riding the whole thing at this time, but I sure would love to have him do that someday and carry on this family tradition.
Yeah. How many generations would that be for you then? 4 or 5? From your grandparents to your parents
He
to
would
you?
he would be the 4th generation.
That's really something. It's so good to learn about this trail. I had no idea. To me, it feels like a wonder of the world that there's a place you can ride across an entire state. I did watch a little bit of that video on your website. Was there a woman interviewed that said she rode this across the state 61 times?
Yes, we have had a few members. I can't think of the exact number at this time. I believe it's close to 20. We have 20 members that have rode the Shore to Shore Trail at least 50 times.
Wow.
And if somebody can do it 50 times, we have a special trophy that they receive. We had a member last year receive his 50th crossing trophy in June. And then I believe this year we will have another person receiving their 50th crossing.
That's so amazing to me.
I did want to point out too that so we have the Shore to Shore ride in June this year, but we also there's an option of the Shore to Shore ride in September. It is a crisscross, but some people are just going to join us for Lake Michigan to Lake Huron, which is the second part of the September. If someone were looking into if they couldn't do it in June, the one in September is just 11 days. That's as fast as we completed in. The average is riding 22 miles per day. So that is, I know I have quite a few new people that have signed up to ride that second part of the September ride.
Walk me through this. If I wanted to sign up for this, what do I expect? Say, I get somebody to take care of everything. My husband's going to come along to move the truck for me because he don't want to ride that far. So you're saying you're going to go from Michigan to Huron. So you're going to go east. Are you going
West to east,
You're
yep.
going west to east. Okay. What do I expect? I sign up. I ride my 22 miles and my husband moves my truck, or is that where the bus comes in? How does
Yes.
what's the logistics there?
We call those people rig jumpers. There are a few husbands that would rather not ride that far as well, and they join together, and in the morning after their wife leaves on her horse, they take their time and they move to the next camp and get camp all set up for their wife when she comes in. And then they head out and go to breakfast, or they find a local golf course, or they find a local fishing hole. They kind of have their own little group now, the husbands that
Oh,
don't ride.
that sounds pretty cool. And so
hmm
that trip, if you decided to go, did you say west to east?
Yep, in September, it's west to east.
West to east in September. How long is that?
It would be 11 days. So arrival day for the people that would join us for that part of the crisscross would be September 16th. And then you would ride on the morning of September 17th. That's when you would ride into Lake Michigan. And then on September 27th, you would ride into Lake Huron.
That is so good to know. That just sounds so cool. It's just logistically, I know a lot of people couldn't do it, but I also know a lot of people could. And maybe there's some endurance riders who aren't competing anymore who think, now this would be pretty cool, to ride that
Right.
whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of single ladies that come, or I should say ladies that come without their husbands. But so I do have a lot of ladies that will call and say, hey, I'm coming for my first time. I'm kind of nervous to do this by myself. Well, you're not alone. We definitely have many ladies here that call and ask the same thing. So my suggestion is to check in. You have to check in with the trail boss when you arrive, and you need to let him know that, hey, I'm here. I'm looking for somebody to ride with, and then he can help connect you with another rider. And maybe you ride with them for a day, and then you want to ride with somebody else. It's just very open. We all have been first timers, and we understand how overwhelming it can be at first. We are also going to start like a mentorship program this year. So we are going to have a few campers, riders that have, been there, done that can mentor somebody if they need help with setting up a high line or help getting water or just other tips and tricks that we've learned along the way, especially from those people that have crossed 50 plus times. They definitely have all the tips and tricks up their sleeve.
So I'm picturing, okay, I'm putting myself in that person's shoes where I'm going to be the person who just shows up alone with my horse. And I'm nervous because I'm going to ride away from my trailer 22 miles. And then how do I get my truck and trailer there? Somebody else drives it for me, or I hop the bus back. And if I hop the bus back, who's watching my horse? So how does that all
Yes.
work?
Yep. In the morning, you move your truck and trailer to the next camp, and then you ride the bus back to where your horse is. So it's important in the morning that you have, your lunch and your water, whatever you're going to pack with you on your horse, that needs to stay with your horse in the camp. And then we only allow one camper per group to ride the bus and move the truck and trailer. So there are always other people back in camp. I myself have always done this with my mom, and so I'm the one that's back at camp, sleeping on some saddle pads, covering up with raincoats. Or, I also get the horses ready and saddled for when she comes back on that bus. So it's, a lot of people do it alone, and they do have the fear of leaving their horse in camp, but there are people around, and we all watch out for each other. We're all in this together, and we want to see people succeed and make it all the way across. Anything can pop up, injuries or weather. I mean, some people don't want to ride in the rain every day. September in northern Michigan can bring anything. The year I did it, the ride started off very cold, like freezing cold. I had to buy a winter hat from a nearby store because I didn't bring a winter hat. And then by the end of the week, we were riding in 85-degree weather in our tank tops. So you have to plan for all weather.
If you could inspire somebody from a different state to start something like MTRA, what would you say to them?
To get started, you need to contact your local DNR officer or Forest Service person to see about getting started with a trail or a camp or something like that.
Maybe you know the answer to this. I remember that, like the state of Wisconsin, they have a plan. The DNR usually has a plan for development in certain areas, but if there's nobody to implement the plan, it does nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. I know the president of the Michigan Horse Trails Association. She was a member of the Equine Sub-Trails Committee through the DNR. And I believe that's where she saw that there was a need for something to promote everything in Michigan for all of the trail riding and all of the group. Mm-hmm.
I mean, somebody has to step up, right? Somebody has to be that person who holds things up. And it's kind of like the legs on a table. A table can have a big job, but it has to have legs under it. And I think of the horse trails community as like that table that we all just plan on that table being held up, but it has to have legs. I've talked to people from different parts of the country, and it seems like there is some trail shrinkage, and there is some trails that were exclusively horse that are being taken over now by e-bikes and different things. And that's a whole other topic. But if you do value horse trails, don't you agree that people kind of have to show up, have to volunteer, have to get involved?
Yes. Any horse association or horse trail area in your state will be happy if you showed up at their work bee or called their association number or reached out to them on Facebook and said, "Hey, I'm looking to volunteer. What can I help with?" Every organization needs that, and we are so lucky here at MTRA that we have been around for so long that we do have people such as myself that are very loyal because it was part of our family history and something that we grew up doing. And so if there's anyone out there that is looking, just to help keep the trail riding industry alive, reach out to those locals and volunteer. Everything here at MTRA is done on a volunteer basis of cleaning our trails and promoting them and maintaining them. So volunteers are the key. We couldn't do this without our volunteers.
That is so true. I'm thinking there may be some people that are already overbooked. Like, I know you were telling me your schedule. You're pretty overbooked and you're still really involved. But what if somebody truly is and they think, "Oh, I can't volunteer for one more thing." So what I want to speak to that is there's value in just being a paid member. Just
Correct.
be a paid member if you want to support something. I'm sure you would welcome people to, even if they are from Illinois, Wisconsin, to go ahead and be a paid member, because that helps. And I think, do you do trail advocacy also? And I think having numbers helps with trail advocacy.
Yes. And you're right. Just being a member, that membership fee, we are a nonprofit, so everything over and above is donated directly back into the maintenance of our trails and our camps. So being a member helps.
So at one time recently, You were sharing with me that the numbers were down for your group. How did you turn that around?
I really have a passion for the Michigan Trail Riders Association. And so I just involved my life. I made sure that I started showing up to everything. I asked to become the secretary, and I was given the position. And then we didn't have much of an online presence before I took this job. And so I definitely, online advertising is free for the most part, on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook and other social media outlets. And so I just feel like it definitely took somebody with the heart and passion for something like this to bring back the club.
So, Jan, let's just mention trail maintenance here because I had a friend of mine a few years ago kind of highlight to me that in Wisconsin, I can't speak for Michigan, but the trail systems, a lot of times the cleanup, the maintenance, it is not the DNR of the state that does it. Most of the time where I see somebody cleared a down tree or got something invasive off the trail, it's usually either a hiking group, a snowmobile club, or a horse group. So, would
Correct.
you speak a little bit to trail maintenance? And maybe you can mention some of your volunteers that have really dug in. I know you mentioned the ice storm, but who takes care of this trail?
Our board members are assigned a section of trail, but some of our board members also work full-time jobs, so it is hard for them to make the time to get out there and clean trails. And we had a group of 8 of us that worked 12-hour days, and we worked until dark the night before our first June ride was coming through there last year. We worked until dark to open up the trail so our riders were able to make it through. And it was a lot. I don't think people understood that ice storm took down tops of trees and dumped them into our trail. Like it was areas that not even a rabbit could get through, that we had to clear and pull brush out of the way. And when the tops of the trees fell across our trail, they intertwined with each other, so they were tangled. And so it everything had to be cut, and then you could pull. And it did. There were 8 awesome volunteers from the MTRA that put in many, many hours before that first June ride of last year to open it for riders.
I know there's danger of leaving somebody out, but could you mention a few of the people who helped?
Yes, I definitely don't want to mention everybody out, but Amanda Still, she was a new board member last year. She was one of those people. Scott Voracek was one of those people. I myself, one of those people. And again, I really hope I don't leave anyone out here. Those members of ours, they really put in the hours and the time.
So I think it might be shocking for people to realize it's not the DNR. I mean, it's just, it's who we pay to park and who we pay for our trail pass in Wisconsin. I don't know how trail passes and things and parking works in Michigan, but in Wisconsin, you have to pay for a parking trail pass and you have to pay, whether it's a snowmobile or horses, you have to pay for a pass for that. I just figured that is how the trails got maintained, and then I realized that's not really how the trails
Yes.
got maintained.
Yes, I am working on growing our relationship with the Michigan DNR and also the U.S. Forest Service, because I would like to have more help from them repairing. Our trail is over 60 years old. I just want to make sure that our watering holes are safe, and I want to make that the access to them is safe for horses, and I want to make sure that all of our small bridge crossings are safe for horses. So, we do work with them, but I'm just working on growing that relationship so it's stronger and there's more communication for our needs and that they understand what those are.
That is so important. I can't believe I forgot to mention that you do have a lot of water crossings and you also have some bridges on the trail.
Yes, we have a boardwalk near the Luzerne camp, which is on the eastern side of the state, that we just helped refinish that last year. It was built, I believe, in the 70s, and then in 85 we had to resurface it. And then we just recently had to in 2025. The U.S. Forest Service didn't want our help at first. They had a company come in and do it, and the company that they hired to come in and do it did not use the correct wood that needed for the boardwalk, and the boards rotted within 2 years after our first original boardwalk lasted 30 years. So then the boardwalk was then closed to us. I reached out to the Forest Service and I said, listen, we have volunteers that want to help with this project. Can you please allow us? And we did. Last year, the beginning of May, we had a work bee with the U.S. Forest Service, and we completed this boardwalk, which is almost 500 feet. We completed it in 5 days, and the Forest Service was impressed by our engineering skills and the amount of people that we had to do this. I'm trying to mention or remember how many boards it took, but each board had 10 screw in it, and the screws were about 10 inches long. So first, the old planks had to be removed by removing all of those screws, and then the new ones had to be installed. They were very heavy. They were made out of white oak, and it took 2 women to carry one of these planks, and we did it in a remote area. And I must say, the U.S. Forest Service won't hesitate to ask for our help again in the future.
That sounds like quite the endeavor. How do you handle volunteer hours? Do you keep track of those and then turn them into the DNR? Because I can't remember the meeting I was at, but they said that that's really important to document the amount of
Yes.
hours and all of that, and that they get turned in to, I know AERC tries to gather those hours also, so that they can advocate for the impact that the horse groups have.
Yes, it is so important to keep track of volunteer hours. We have a spreadsheet that we use, and we would like for people to track their miles on how far they drove to help volunteer with this work. We want to know how many hours that you worked on it, whether it was with a chainsaw or just using hand tools. We also want to know if you used your horse. There's also a different kind of bracket for if you were on a horse and you did this. So yes, it's very important for everyone to track their volunteer hours. We can use those hours to help get grants, and also to show the DNR and the U.S. Forest Service, like, listen, this is what the volunteer hours that we have invested into this trail and our camps. What can you do for us? So yes, anybody who volunteers anywhere, please keep track of your hours. It helps in tremendous ways.
That's so good. Is it only Michigan riders that are part of MTRA?
No, we currently have members from 16 different states, and we also have members from Canada. So it doesn't matter where you live. And I know we have a group coming from Arizona, and we also have a new group coming from Minnesota for our June ride this year.
And do you know who is the ride manager for your July endurance ride? Or
It would be Barb Curdy.
Barb
from
Curdy? That's awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. And so then I would just like to mention too, if you don't think that you could ever get to this in person, you can do our virtual at warhorseendurance.com. You will get the buckle for the shore to shore ride. And I do have at least one person who said they're going to earn that buckle while they do your ride. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Awesome.
Way to do that. And Jan, I want to say thank you so much for being here today, for all the work you're doing behind the scenes, because it really is people like you that keep these trails going, that they just would not exist. And the fact that you asked to be secretary, most people duck in a meeting. I have to say, a lot of people don't go to local trail meetings or things because they don't want to get volunteered in. So that says so much about your heart that you said, hey, pick me. I'm right here. I'll do this. So you're preserving something that's so special, not just for people in Michigan, but just for, I think, the world at large, to preserve the trails that for centuries, this is how people got around. It's so important for people, for their healing and for their hearts, just to be involved still with not just the horse, but even hiking those trails, just with nature. So I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you so much for being a part of our podcast today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
To experience the Shore to Shore Trail in person by joining one of the Michigan Trail Rider Association rides, you can find their information for their June and September events at MTRA.org. If you're looking for that endurance ride experience on this trail, check out the Great Lakes Distance Riding Association. Their rides are listed under the event tabs at GLDRA.org. And if you'd like to start right where you are today at home and track some miles from your barn down your own trails, you can join us for the Warhorse 250-mile shore-to-shore virtual event. And you can find that information at warhorseendurance.com. We have an amazing awards packet going out soon. Thank you again so much for being here. for being part of our journey and is just the beginning of a beautiful ride season. This is the Endurance Horse Podcast, signing off for now. Endurance Horse Podcast is created by Christina Hike Photography, LLC, and is a production of Warhorse Endurance.